Thank you. Thank you very much, and we've now started live broadcasting. Thank you for attending and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Standards Committee, scheduled to last for a maximum of 2.5 hours. That's a maximum, not a target. Yeah, I'm sure we'd all be pleased if it was not 2.5 hours. Please, can I request that mobile phones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so we don't disturb the conduct of the meeting. The meeting is a public meeting and is being live streamed to the public to view. Can I ask that when you wish to speak, you raise your hand and only speak when I indicate you can? And please ensure that your microphone is, I should have registered myself first, ensure your microphone is switched on when you're speaking, and switch it off after you've finished, please. We have some remote participants, 4 of them, and could they use the raised hands function if they wish to make a contribution to the meeting, and we'll try and keep an eye on that, and I'm sure I'll be prompted by others around me. There's no fire test planned for today, and if there is an emergency evacuation, please take instructions from the town hall staff. And the assembly point is Tudor Square. As this is the first meeting of the municipal year for the Audit and Standards Committee, I think it's worthwhile doing a quick round of introductions first. I'll start with myself and then we'll go around the room. I'm Councillor Colin Ross and I'm chair of this meeting today. So.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Ryan Keyworth. I'm the Council's Director of Finance and Commercial Services and Section 151 Officer.
Thank you. I'm Gillian Duckworth, Director of Legal and Governance. I'm Alison Howard, Independent Co-opted Member.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Tom Hunt.
I'm Councillor Kevin Oxley. Councillor Simon Clement-Jones.
Good afternoon. Linda Hunter, Senior Finance Manager, Internal Audit and Risk Management.
Afternoon, I'm Jess Kavanagh. I'm the Applications and Systems Officer for the Place Portfolios.
Afternoon, I'm Bev Maloney. I'm the Head of Neighbourhood Services.
Good afternoon, my name is Najman Ali and I'm the Executive Director of Operational Services.
Hello, I'm Helen Maltino. I'm a Finance Manager with Internal Audit. Behind me is my colleague Samina Mahmood, also from Internal Audit.
Hi, I'm Ben Curran, Councillor for Walkley and Deputy Chair of the Committee.
Hi, I'm Councillor Angela Ardenso.
Joe Bell, Democratic Services Officer.
Can the people on the screen introduce themselves? Thank you.
Hi, Jo Cairns, independent person, the same as David.
Hello everyone, Councillor David Ogle from Exclusion Parish Council, just representing the council on this committee.
And last but not least, in the room in front of me, I have. In charge of making sure the technology works, basically. Okay, thank you. Moving on the agenda, have we any apologies for absence?
I've not received any apologies for absence, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Exclusion of the press and public. We have item 11 today, for which we will be excluding the press and public, and that will be taken last on the agenda. That's the strategic risk report. And next, declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare an interest in any items of the business on the agenda today? I see no indications of that, so no declarations of interest. Okay, next is minutes of the previous meeting, which was the meeting of the committee held on the 24th of March 2022. There are some members present who were at the meeting. Can we accept those as a true record? Thank you. I'm getting nods of assent for that. Thank you very much. Are there any issues on matters arising that you want to make? Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 10, point 512, I wonder whether we are kind of actioning that about the members' interests register, because I haven't received any kind of request for updates. And on page 11, point 6.3, last year we agreed that we would have a meeting with the auditors where only the councillors, the members of the committee would be present, and then it didn't happen because of the timings. So could we timetable that in the auditors' work schedule, please?
Brian, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very happy to work with the auditors to make sure that happens. It's members of a committee or members of other audit committees will be familiar with, the normal practice of external auditors meeting in private with non-executive or elected members of an audit and standards committee. So yeah, very happy to do that. I'll pick that up with the audit team.
Gillian, you wanted to add to a response?
Yes, with regard to 512, the group whips were informed at their last meeting, so you should be receiving something from your group whip. And then there's an action in place to send the reminder 6 months after the election.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any issues? Simon?
Thank you very much. On page 10, 5.6, in terms of I don't know if the auditors might want to comment on how things have gone so far on their work. On the budgetary position of the council, how that's gone thus far, and what we see the next well, now 9 months or so of their work going. And I don't know if there's a council officer who wants to perhaps comment on the current budgetary position in terms of where we are and the kind of horrifying predictions that I'm hearing. Thanks, Chair.
I think this will be you, Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. So, members will be familiar that the Strategy and Resources Committee received budget monitoring information from me at its meeting a couple of weeks ago, and each of the individual policy committees are also receiving specific reports from me at the first meeting of each of those committees, which is taking place around this meeting. We've had some already, and there's one or two still to follow next week, I think. Budget position for the council, just to briefly summarise, and finished last year about £20 million overspent, which is a little bit better than we thought it was going to be, but obviously not sustainable by any means. The budget monitoring position at the start of this year with a month one forecast, so very early days, is about an £19 million overspend. The reasons for that vary by committee, and each of those policy committees are receiving, as I said, detailed reports from me and my team to help them manage that position.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that?
Well, yeah, so it's just really on the specific points about working with the auditors and say how that's gone so far, and the next, well, until the end, until we hopefully get the letter signed.
I'm not sure that needed. Go on, right.
So the last conversation I've had with the auditors, they are still on track to finish the audit before the end of this calendar year, which I think is an advance on where we ended up last year.
Okay, thank you. I think that concludes that item on the agenda. So we move on to the next item, item 6, which is the internal audit plan. And Linda Hunter, you're going to lead on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to give you some key areas to highlight in this report, it's our methodology and programme of work for internal audit for 22-23. The plan, a key point is that it needs to be flexible and reactive and responding to changes in issues and risks as they appear during the year. In September 22, what we will do is we'll reassess this plan anyway, have a look at the first call list, and also look at any other high-risk areas that need to be added in and changed for this report. But just to give you a bit of idea of what we do in developing the plan, we look at the risk management plan, we look at corporate risk registers, we look at the annual governance statement, We discuss with a range of officers, that's from exec director level to heads of service. We discuss with the finance staff and business partnering staff again about what Councillor Simon Clement just mentioned about the deficit and the budget position. We look at core cities and South West Yorkshire audit plans to see if there's any areas that we've got common themes that we can include in our plan. We also we have a risk scoring, a scoring methodology that we use to prioritise our audits that get onto this plan. And I think you will see that the majority of these audits on either statutory where it's grant sign-off or they are high priority audits. The main areas in the plan, they cover routine audits, so that is anything from a system review to a process review to a work area. Also covers reactive and proactive investigations. We cover the main financial systems which external audit can place reliance on our work that we do on those. We've also included an element of business partnering there, so that's looking at new systems and changes. So on page 24, it gives you a summary there. In total, we're doing 1,488 days of audit activity, and that equates to 108 outputs. So that is our aim, that's our performance indicator that we're aiming to. The full plan is in Appendix 1 to the report, and that does include a first call. So these are the audits that haven't been scored using our methodology to go in the full plan, but we will call on these in the event when we start to scope an audit, just in case it's either too early to do it or there's issues with that review, then we'll use something an audit off the first call list. And then in November, when I've done the mid-year review, which is in September, I'll bring to the November committee if there's significant changes with this plan. So what we defined that would be was 15% variance. So if I've got a 15% variance between that 1,488 days and the 108 outputs, then I would bring that back to this committee for you to see what's the reasons for that big change. So what I'm asking for the committee to do is endorse this work programme for 22-23 for internal audit. So any questions?
Okay, I've got, I'll take Kevin first, and then Angela, and then Alison. Simon, yeah.
Thank you, Linda, and apologies if I start coughing, it's just the atmosphere in here is so warm. The RAG ratings, how confident are you in regarding to those RAG ratings, because they're being set by individual directors in terms of assessing the risk in their areas, and there could be a propensity to either over or under prioritise those RAG ratings. So have we got any set procedures, or is it a subjective RAG rating? The next question is obviously then, in terms of assessing priorities, you are concentrating on the high priority, but would it not be better to also do a sweep through the medium and low priorities to see if people have missed anything, but also just to ensure that those RAG ratings were correct? And I don't want to insinuate, but there's a potential for people to hide problems.
Yeah, that's true. So what we do, those RAG ratings, the risk ratings there, we score those. So it's not the portfolios or the exec directors. We score those, and we have a methodology we do on that. So we score them based on when we last audited it, the financial, the budget element side, if there's been any changes in a system or a structure. So we take all that, and then sort of the likelihood of a fraud or an issue occurring in that area. So we score that ourselves. And we do like a horizon scanning. So yeah, on this plan, a lot of the high priority ratings are on there, but we do look at the medium and lows as well. So yeah, we do scan across, but as it ended up, it's pretty heavy loaded on the highs at the minute.
Thank you. Is that all right? Alison next then. Oh, sorry, Angela next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Linda, for that. I just have a very quick question about on page 37 about the iTrend system process. I was wondering whether if that has been already timetabled, and then at the end I just wrote a note. I wonder how the audit internal audit process is going to change because of the new committee system, if there is any impact, and if there's going to be any kind of work done differently or any kind of input into the committee or from the committees.
Yeah, the Trent Systems process review, that's a payroll review, and that's ongoing at the moment, so that's a Q1 audit for us. So we haven't got the results of that, but say it is ongoing at the moment, so that's a key one we're looking at. As far as the new committee structure goes, internal audit don't formally report into one of those policy committee groups, but what we have got, it's on the resources part of the section. We have got an audit in there to look at the new structure in 6 months' time as to how, any lessons learned, any changes or how it's going. So, because we still need to maintain our independence, so we are doing an audit review of that. But yeah, I don't actually formally report into one of those policy committees.
Okay. Alison, thank you.
Thanks, Linda. My question's about staffing. I know that last year you had lots of vacancies, which some of them were proving quite difficult to fill. So I'm just wondering if you consider that the staffing levels that you have currently are sufficient to deliver the plan.
Yeah, the staffing levels, like I said, we've had it pretty stable for the last couple of years, sort of during lockdown. So we were fully staffed, but we have had some staff leave just recently. So I have got 2 vacancies at senior auditor level and 2 vacancies at grade 6 level. So we have got some vacancies. One of those is out to recruitment at the minute. The closing date was today. And then we're in the process of recruiting to the other ones as well. So I'll be able to feed back at a future meeting if we manage to fill those. I mean, we're hoping to fill them, but yeah, we have got some vacancies at the minute.
Simon, then.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask about recruitment and resources, so I'm glad to hear that hopefully we'll have a full team soon. So on page 22, 19, you said there's 4 specific pieces of proactive forward work plan. Can you tell me what those are, or is it secret?
Yeah, no, I can tell you what they are. They're on page 43. So the proactive, there's the 4 there. So there's one on council tax exemptions, one on small business rate relief, another one about refreshing and reviewing the anti-fraud policies, and then one about members' declarations of interest. So they're the 4 proactive pieces of work that we'll be doing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Tom.
Sorry to come in late. Forgive me if this is showing my newness to the committee, but the first call list, this is an 18-month audit plan. Are there things that, and these are not taking place in 22-23, are there issues that were on the last year's first call list that have not made it through onto this year's first call list? Is there a risk that things drop off?
Yeah, what we do is some of the things that were on last year's first call list, with the mid-year in September when we did the review, we brought some of those forward. Okay. So yeah, they do tend to get, but not all of them would appear. And then when we review it again, like we've just done now, the review we've just done, some of those were either no longer applicable, or it could be that there wasn't a risk there that they thought they envisaged when we discussed it previously. So things do move on sometimes, but we do make sure that we go through them all and nothing's missed, and they're either included in this report or, yeah, there's a reason why they're taken off. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I've got no further questions. So, page 17, the recommendation is set out there that basically it's recommended that members endorse the attached programme of work for 2022-23. Can I have your agreement on that? That is agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Item 7 on the agenda is progress in high opinion reports. And it's you again, Linda.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report comes to this Audit and Standards Committee every 6 months. And what it does, it tracks our audit recommendations that are outstanding for our no assurance opinion reports and our limited assurance reports with a high impact assessment. And just for those sort of new people on this committee, we have 4 opinions. So the ones that we don't track on here are the sort of the limited and the limited with a medium or a low impact, and then the ones that we give full assurance for. So it's the key reports with the areas of weakness and risk that we track on here. What we do is it stays on this report until we're satisfied that there's been adequate implementation and that the whole recommendation has been actioned. So you'll notice from this report we've actually got one report in here at the moment that we're asking to be removed, and that's the information security. So that one's actually been all actioned, and we're happy with that one, the progress. There's a new audit that we've added on, adult safeguarding, that's on the first time this review, and we're tracking the progress with those recommendations now. And then there's also 2 reports that we've issued since we published this on disposal of IT assets and the creditors audit review. So those 2 audits will appear on the next tracker that you'll see in 6 months' time. Just to highlight the key points there, there's 29 recommendations on this report that we're tracking, and 16 in this last 6 months have been implemented. So that is sort of a good result. And to be fair, we've had a lot bigger reports than this in the past, so things are improving in the recommendations being actioned. There are 2 critical recommendations outstanding. One of them relates to the housing management system, and we've got our colleagues here coming to talk to you about that one. And that is the good thing with this committee, is that historically they've asked if it's on the tracker for a couple of reports, then we ask the individual service leads to come and explain. It could be a resource issue, it could be a financial issue, it could be, what is the problem? So that we've got our colleagues coming to talk about that. The other recommendation is the safeguarding recommendation about working with mental health. And again, that one's only been added on this report, so it's sort of in its infancy at the moment on that one. There's a RAG rating, you'll notice that it's coloured in there, I think it's page 64's got the details about the RAG rating. The key thing to look out for is the red recommendations, where they've been outstanding for more than 12 months, and that is since the implementation date. So it's been 12 months has lapsed or more since we agreed to implement that recommendation. And then I take this report, before it comes to here to Audit and Standards Committee, I take this report to the Performance and Delivery Board, and they're fully supportive, and what they've agreed now is that a new process is set up where any red rated recommendations, so the ones that are in this report here, on the 14th of July, I'm taking the individual leads, and we're going to discuss, the issue and, is there a problem here, and track those recommendations through that Performance and Delivery Board. Can
you just say for the new members of the committee and also the public what the Performance and Delivery Board is, who's on it and what its purpose is?
Yeah, the Performance and Delivery Board, it's a variety of, it's a combination of officers across the portfolios. And I know, obviously, Ryan Key was on that board, and I think Gillian is actually as well. I think you always on that board. No. But it is a mix of from the different portfolios, and what they're looking at is obviously performance. So it's performance areas. So that is why the tracker goes to it, because it's the performance within the service areas. So that's on that board. I think they meet every other week as well. So it's quite a frequent meeting they have. Okay. And then on page 50 of the report, that is summarising the recommendations. So that sort of outlines there which ones are ongoing, which ones have been completed in this period, and that just tracks it. And then the main bulk of the report is all the recommendations, and the individual service lead officers. The far column actually explains their latest update as to where they're at with that progress with that recommendation. So what I'm asking this committee to do is to note the content of the report, but also agree the removal of the Information Security Incidents Audit Report, because that one's now been fully implemented and we're happy with that progress. So any questions on that report?
Right. Angela and then Kevin.
Mine is not really a question, it's just in terms of, I've mentioned this already, September has 30 days, it's repeated quite a few times as 31st, so we need to update that. But also I just want to, for those who are new to this committee, I think we've become much more swift at dealing with things, because when I started we had items that were like 4 years old at one point, and I think because we are we're keeping track, aren't we? We're keeping you on your toes. Things are being actioned a lot quicker. They're tracked a lot quicker. And I think the RAG rating also came in whilst I've been on the committee, and I think that has really helped to move things faster. I'm just assuming that the after the decision yesterday in the adult health and social care, we're going to discuss the housing, the new OHMS application review at some point, and that should really come off that eventually, hopefully soon, if we can implement it smoothly. So thank you for all the work, because it's really paid off, I think, changing the system slightly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kevin.
Hi, Linda. I'm not sure which page to reference for you. It's either page 55 or page 9 of the internal audit report. And it was part 210. It references signposting training in terms of the message to signpost to other parties where there is a risk to others should be reiterated to staff. Training on this topic should be targeted at the same audience as wider safeguarding training and monitoring. In the actions, I just wondered why that training wasn't mandated, rather than it sounds like it's encouraged, and obviously people are signposted to that, but given that quite important nature of that, why we weren't mandating.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know why it's not been mandated, but I can track that. Yeah, I can track that through. But I know from another area of review, the e-learning, fraud e-learning, it takes a bit of a while to get things mandated, to get its mandatory training across the board. So, you know, it does take time to get things on a mandatory training for all. Because to be fair, there is quite a lot now, particularly for managers, for us to do on mandatory training. So it's trying to pick out the key ones, like say, otherwise everybody would say, you know, all the training's key. So, yeah. But yeah, I can find that out for you. Yeah.
Could you copy all members of the committee so we know, because it's an important question.
Yeah.
Have I got any further questions or comments on this report? In that case, can I move to the recommendation that we note the content of the report and that we agree to the removal of information security incidents from the tracker? Is that agreed? I'm getting nods of assent there, so that's recommendations agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Item 8, the new housing systems and project update. This is the hopefully coming towards the end of a very long saga. As was alluded to in the last report, it's been going on a number of years. So, Ajman, are you going to lead on this, or is it Bev? Or
yes, thanks, Chair. Just by way of some introductory remarks, I think you're quite right. This is one of those really long-standing audit reports that's been outstanding, I think, since 2018. So as the new incoming exec director, I'm quite keen to make sure that any long-standing ones have been dealt with, and I can give you, the audit committee, assurance that the staff have done that work, and hopefully after this presentation you'll agree with that. So what I'm after is making sure we can close this outstanding recommendation down. I've got two colleagues here, Jess and Bev, who have been very busy over the last few years working on this new development of a new housing management system. This is replacing a very old system that the council has had, and what you'll see from their presentation is probably about 10 minutes long. It will give you an indication in terms of the journey that's been taken to get to where we are now, as well as updating the software currently. So it's reasonably fit for purpose, but not quite there yet in terms of the existing system. And so Bev and Jess will give you that journey, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to understand the complexity of IT systems, and in particular the housing IT system, and ask any question that you have. So Do you want to
Thank
take
you. Yeah. Can we share the presentation? It should have been in the pack. No, that's okay. Okay, I'll take you through the presentation. Thank you, Ajman. As Ajman said, there was an audit report done some time ago. Just to give you a bit of background in the report, we use a system predominantly in housing called the Open Housing Management System. So we use the term OHMS, but alongside that we also use other systems. So alongside that system we've already got other systems, and I've put those in the report, such as a system called Abritats, where we let properties. We also use Apex and Technology Forge for some of the investment work, and also Confirm for grounds maintenance. So as well as the Open Housing Management System that the audit report was done on, there's lots of systems that sit around that, but OHMS is the main housing management system that we use. So a bit of information just to give you about that. And what it is, it's an integrated housing management system, so the supplier will upgrade the system on regular intervals. So as I said, that's a little bit of background to it. If we go on to talk about the audit recommendation, so the audit recommendation and findings were that the council was not currently operating on the most up-to-date version of OHMS, and it was at least 3 versions behind. So we got an issue with that. So we'd got some more up-to-date software, but we weren't on that software, which was an issue for us. And there was also an issue with our disaster recovery and also our business continuity plans. So what would happen is if that system wasn't available for a period of time, we needed to have up-to-date plans for that. One of the issues for us was to actually get that system, the OHMS system, onto the latest upgrade. We needed to do a lot of work with the hardware, and it would cost us a lot of money. So it was a significant amount of money, and also at a time when we were looking to the contract for the hardware supply was changing. So as I said, we had to consider the cost of doing that. And us as a service, we've been talking about replacing the system for a number of years because, as Ajman said, it's a very old system that we were using. So we knew we needed to replace it in the longer term. So if I take you through the actions that we've taken since the audit report. So we did move the OHMS system onto more sustainable hardware, and that was done in December 2020. In January 2021, we went out to the market to see, as well as replacing the Open Housing Management System, if there was a supplier who could also look at the other systems that was associated with OHMS. So we've done that work and see if we could rationalise the systems. In April 2021, we upgraded OHMS to the latest version, so we are now on the latest version of OHMS, and we've got extra capabilities that we didn't have when the audit report was completed, and the system is fully supported by the supplier. What we've also done then, from looking to replace the system, is we've gone out and issued a tender to the market to replace the Open Housing Management System, and as I say, rationalise the systems that sit around that. So from an audit point of view, we feel that we've covered the outstanding recommendations. So what we've done is we are currently operating on the latest version of OHMS. We've updated the disaster recovery plan and the business continuity plans. So we've resolved the issues, and we've done the options appraisal to look at what we want to do going forward as a service with regard to replacing the systems that we've got. So going forward, and there's a bit more detail in the presentation, so we're in the process now of getting to hopefully a preferred supplier, so we're hoping to be able to do that in June, and then from June we will start implementing the new system, and it is a big project, and what we're hoping to do as well as implement a new system, look at the current ways of working within the Housing and Neighbourhoods service and make some improvements to that, and hopefully improve the customer experience. The current timescales are for September 23, which is the audit recommendation was anything to do with OHMS. We're hoping that phase 1, which will be implemented at that point, we will cover the audit off because everything will have been moved from the Open Housing Management System to the new system, and then we'll look at doing a phase 2 in March 24. So just a little bit about the place systems review. As we've said, we needed to modernise the systems and the infrastructure, not only in the Housing and Neighbourhoods Service, but in place. But a decision was made that we were going to look at the housing systems first because, as we've said, OHMS was out of date. We'd got the audit recommendation. OHMS was implemented in 1999, so as you can imagine, by current standards of IT, it's a very old system. And us as a housing service, we've actually found workarounds that sometimes take staff time and also don't enhance the customer experience. As I said, what happens with around homes, what you've got is lots of associated systems. So what that may do is we may have to update as members of staff several systems when a customer talks to us, and also we may have different information within those systems. So it is an issue for us. We do, as I said, find ways around it, but it does create time. And as I said earlier, we can't really just replace the open housing management systems. We want to look at all the systems that are associated with that. There's lots of opportunities for change and improvement by what we're doing. As I said, we went out to the market to see if rather than using several systems, we could use one. And one purchase would help us with the issues we've got with the current systems, so how they interface with one another and the systems talk to one another. That's a big issue for us. One system will be cheaper rather than paying for several systems, and it would improve the data and integration. So for us, as a housing and neighbourhood service, one of the key services is people who want to report repairs. So we need to ensure that the systems that we choose integrates with any repair system we've got. We need to improve the online offer. We have got an online offer, but the feedback we get from customers is it needs to be improved. And we have got new initiatives that will be coming along, for example, lots of work around fire safety, and this will allow us to be able to have more up-to-date working practices. And then what we've said is we set out with some of our main objectives for the new systems, and that was moving services online. It was having a single view of a customer. It was having a single view of an asset. So what I've done is I've listed some of the things we're hoping to achieve with the new system. And then what we have done during the course of the last, probably, I'd say 18 months, to choose the new system, we've spoke to staff. So what we've done is we've worked with staff to gather any requirements of the new system. And as you can imagine, the Housing and Neighbourhood Service provides a lot of different services. So we've worked with staff to ensure we understand what's needed from a new system, i.e. it needs to do what it does now, and plus we could look for opportunities to work better. What we're hoping to do in June is set up what we're calling a test office, whereby we will bring staff in from the service to actually test that the system does what we need it to do and it's easy to use for those members of staff that are delivering services to customers. Along the way as well, we have engaged with customers, so we've engaged with tenants, residents and leaseholders. So what we've tried to do is gather what is important to them, not only what's important, what the issues are for customers when they contact in the Housing Neighbourhood Service, so we can hopefully try and iron out some of those issues as we're implementing the new system. So I've talked about the timeline. So what we're doing is we're hopefully going to award the contract, and then the implementation will be complete from September to March 24. Some of the things I think that I said that are important to us, the improvements for staff and also for customers. So one of the things that I said earlier frustrates our customers, that sometimes they will ring us up for an inquiry, and what we will do is we will not be able to give them the information there and then because we'll have to check several systems. It will take us longer, and sometimes, as I said, we do have different information in different systems. So we are keen to ensure that we address some of those issues, and a lot of feedback we've had from customers are saying that they ring us up and they do give us information, and then that information is not passed on. And also people do want to receive information by text more than we currently do, and they also want to have a better online capability to deal with all issues from a tenancy. So they want to be able to pay the rent, maybe look to report a repair, maybe bid for a property. So there's some of the feedback that we are very actively working with customers to ensure that the system that we use needs to be it's for customers, and we need to ensure that the service is what we need to deliver. So it's just a really whistle-stop tour of, as Ajman said, that's been a long project, and as I said, to give you the assurance that we have dealt with the recommendations from the audit report, and then we're looking at the next step, which is implementing the new housing management system. And we have got, as part of the governance structure, we have got a review board, so they will be monitoring the progress that we're making as a project team towards the implementation dates. So, as it says in the recommendation, what we're hoping is that we can close the audit recommendation. So if you note that, and we can close it, and then we'll, if needed, we'll provide progress reports on the new housing management system.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure we've all got lots of questions, because as soon as IT systems are introduced into any big organisations, nerves start jangling. Just for clarity, now I've seen a number of hands, and I'll log those in a minute, but we're in June 2022 now.
Yeah.
I take it from what you said, the contract hasn't actually been awarded yet. So we've got 17 days or whatever it is left. Is there more than one offer on the table? Are we judging between them, or are we down to the final one?
We can't update, unfortunately we can't update you on that, because we are in the final stages, but we are hopeful that we will be able to award the contract in June.
So you can't tell me whether there's more than one supplier still in the frame?
We're not in the public domain.
No, sorry. It's commercially sensitive.
Okay, I'll take that. Okay, can you raise your hands again? Sorry, I'll take Tom first, then Angela, then Simon, then Kevin.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. That was really helpful. I wondered if you could say what risks have been identified about the implementation phase, perhaps around the risk of overspend or delays, and what measures do you plan to put in place to keep the project on track through to March 2024? You've just touched upon one perhaps aspect of that in the review board, so maybe you could say a little bit more about that. In particular, I'd be interested to know the membership of that, its relationship with, I suppose, this committee, and also whether or not customers will have a role in that review board, and what the role of customers is on an ongoing basis during that implementation phase. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. What we've got is we've got a project plan. So what we've done, and we've also spoke to other local authorities that are quite close, that have gone through a similar process replacing their housing management system. So we've got a plan in place, and we regularly review the progress for that plan, and we've got a communication plan, we've got a risk register, and we've got a governance structure. So from our point of view, we report regularly to the housing leadership team for a steer from a systems point of view, and then there is a board that Ajman's on the board, and Mike Weston, who's our IT director, they're on the board, and then we report to that board on a monthly basis on progress. So we've got structures in place to ensure we're on track, and as you say, what will be, I think what you'll be keen that we monitor, Ajman, is that we're on time and we're on budget. So we will be monitoring those arrangements in that place systems review board. Have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd just add is one of the things that came out of the audit report is to make sure that the current system is updated in terms of software. So as Bev has said, that's been done. So in terms of making sure that it's resilient, it's working, it does what it needs to do, but it doesn't do everything that Bev has outlined. So services can continue to be delivered, but implementation will run its course in the way that Bev has described, and we'll keep that monitoring on a regular basis.
And if I can pick up the point of the customers, what we've done is we've got in the Housing and Neighbourhood Service, we've got an advisory panel. So we've been to the advisory panel on think it's 4 occasions, and to try and pick out from what's important to customers. And we also recently did a survey, and we got the results yesterday again. So part of it will be keep checking back as we go through the implementation with customers to see what's important to them. Now we did consider, and we may do this, that when we set up the test office, we could bring customers into that environment. So when we get to that point, we could test that it's not only easy for our staff to use, but that we're getting it right there. So I'm very keen that we do engage customers, because they're the people who will be, they receive the service, that the system. So I'm very keen that we do that.
Okay, thank you. Angela.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. You've already mentioned, from an audit point of view, I've really welcomed this, because obviously we know how difficult it is to work with things that are outdated, and especially if the systems you have don't talk to each other, so you don't have all the information together. It sounds like a mammoth task to do this, and I'm just wondering how we're going to ensure that the price of the system that we buy, which I assume is kind of a custom made, nearly to spec, how do we ensure that in the specs we have absolutely everything, so that the price doesn't spiral out of control? Because that's always the trick with any database, any CRM system. I just feel that the implementation looks to me a bit ambitious. I mean, I'm all for ambition, but we don't want to set ourselves up to fail as well, because it's frustrating for people who work on stuff. So how are we going to ensure that we stick to these times? And if we don't, how do we support staff who work really hard and are getting frustrated because things are not going to plan? And also in terms of access and ensuring that everybody can access the system, because that's one of the things with lots of things at the council, because we have things that have been in place historically. Accessibility seems to be like an afterthought in lots of the things that we do, and I think it's important that everybody can access it. So if it's people who have particular learning difficulty or disability access, or people who don't have the internet, they can also access the same information in other ways, whether in person or by phone. And also, of course, you will have thought about access from mobile devices, which most people now use rather than laptops or computers. So for me, it's really the budget. I assume that this was approved in previous budgets, so it's like earmarked reserves kind of thing, where we've got a certain amount of money set aside for this project in particular. And it's just, my worry is just around how we keep the price to what we can afford, because we haven't got any spare cash, as you well know.
Yeah, and it's an integrated housing management system, so it is an off-the-shelf package. I think what we want to do with that off-the-shelf package is have a look at it, see if it's fit for purpose for us and for customers, and we might want to tweak some of the things that it does. We have had the budget and it has been allocated, and what we have done is we've spent a lot of time talking to staff and talking to customers to ensure that the requirements that were sent out covered the range of things we need the system to do. And then once the information has come back from the suppliers, we've actually looked at that and scored those responses. So we've said, can it do it? Can it do it well? Can it do it okay? So we've gone through quite a robust process to ensure that we've scoped what we need, and we've then tested the responses to ensure that the system can do that. So from our point of view, we have done that, and we want to, as I said, look at that system when we get it in place to ensure then that it does what we need it to do. And it may mean that we do have to configure the system slightly differently, but as I said, we feel we can do that within the timescales that we've been given based on other local authorities and how they've done that.
I've seen you. You've talked to customers and stuff. Have you talked to other authorities who are using these systems?
Yeah, and we will continue to talk to them once we've got the contract signed and learn lessons from them, because obviously if they've done it, things that have worked, then I'm quite keen to pinch their ideas, and for things that haven't worked, I'm quite keen to learn from those as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did I steal your thunder there?
No, it's okay. I don't mind. That was my question. I was just wondering whether you talk to other people who already use this whatever system.
I think the other thing I'd add to that is that the importance of having that testing phase is really important. So unless we're completely satisfied that it's going to do what it says on the tin, you know, it doesn't need to go necessarily live. So that's really important to bear in mind, I think. And as with any IT system, it's not a start-stop. I think what we need to do is make sure that we continue to invest in that as new technology comes forward, new working practices come forward, and how we develop and reshape the service. So what I see this is part of a continuous journey moving forward, and investing in this to make sure that customer service is excellent.
And we are keen from an access point of view to make sure that obviously we will improve the online offer, but we will make sure that other ways that customers contact us can still contact us, and it will be, they can use the product on a smartphone, because that was one of the questions we've asked. So we're very keen to make sure people have got the choice, and as you say, some people don't want online, so they still want to contact us by phone or in person, so we'll still have those services in place.
Now, contacting by phone, there's a whole new different scenario, but we'll park that one for a while. Simon.
Thank you. And thank you very much for all your work on this. It has been going a long time, and here we are. It's a bright new future. Unfortunately, this is absolutely the most dangerous point. Full disclosure, I work, I write software for a living. I've done for the last 20 odd years. So I've made every single mistake in the book and seen them made. And the number one thing for me is management buy-in. Obviously, you're very, very keen to get this done. The next big thing is experience. So my first question really is as leaders of this project, what has your experience been of similar projects and this kind of organisational change? And so my next question really is, are you kind of prepared for that organisational change, because you don't just bring a new system and everything works, and so that brings a cost in its own. So there's the cost you've got of actually getting it in. Then there's the cost of actually getting it configured so that people work it out, and that is a big staff cost that you're going to have to bear. And then there's the training cost. So really, as I say, a bit about perhaps your experience with this, and the experience of the other members on the review board. And as I say, this is the most dangerous point, and it's the next 6 months. You'll find out, look back and go, are we going in the right direction? So it does seem a bit odd for the audit committee to be going, yeah, okay, thank you very much, and waving you goodbye, just at the point when things could go horribly wrong. I mean, what I don't want to do is obviously take away any of your time and bring it back, but I'm just wondering where that review board reports to in terms of scrutiny, and if that would be us, and if we can ask for a report, not necessarily officers, at a reasonable interval, so that we can keep a weather eye on what's going on, and hopefully hear the great progress. Thank you.
I think we'll possibly add a little bit to the recommendations about that at the end of the questions.
Thank you, Chair. I also spent 2 years implementing SAP HR, finance, procurement, and stores at the University of Sheffield. So I know the risk to the business. I know the depth of the project in terms of delivering that from both project board, change management, actually delivering the system, and then training out. And obviously, I agree with Simon in terms of there's still an awful lot of risk from now until then. One thing that just slightly concerned me, what you said about tweaking the system, which is an off-the-shelf system in terms of how you want it. We used to have a mantra on that project, which was the system does as you found it when you came out of the box, and quite often those types of tweaks prove very expensive, and also then when you're patching, every time you patch, you also have to repatch those tweaks as well, which is obviously added cost, but also experience and resource in terms of ICT. And obviously, I don't know that much about the new system, so it's difficult to say, but there may be changes in your working practices and how you actually deliver that new system to make it work for you. If it works, fantastic, and I think there'll be lots of people around Sheffield who'll be more than happy and probably jumping up and down about it. But I agree with Simon in terms of as well. Presumably, the audit report was the concern that the system was going to fall down. We've stabilised that, but actually there's still a big risk in bringing that new system in, making sure it's fit for purpose, and the cost and both resources and funding and time to deliver that. So for me, I'm not happy in terms of signing this off because there is still that risk there.
Do you want me to pick some of those bits up? Yeah, okay. So just on your first point about that sort of configurability and tweaking and additional expense, I think it's key that when you procure a system of this nature, you're going for a balance of you want it to come out of the box and function, but you want to be able to adjust it to meet our specific requirements. So I think as with a lot of these systems, there are elements of the system that are not changeable, that the supplier, this is what we've bought, and they will say, this is what you bought. There are elements that are entirely configurable by us, and then there's probably bits in the middle where we can ask them to tweak it if we've got a really good reason for doing so, and if we're not willing to change our working practices. And we would absolutely have to weigh up the risk there between getting the exact system that we want and the cost of doing that versus, well, actually, if we just work in a different way, if the supplier is saying 20 other authorities in the country work in this way and it works fine, then we've got some questioning to do about our working practices and weighing that up against, do we want to do lots of tweaks to a system and then bear the brunt of that going forward around upgrades? You're absolutely right. So all of those considerations have gone into the procurement process of trying to make sure that we get a solution that's got that right balance between we don't want to build it from scratch, we haven't got the resource to do that and it's too expensive, but also we do want to be able to make those Sheffieldisms where we can. So that's been a really key part of the selection of the supplier. Not saying that means it will be perfect, but that it has been a key consideration. I think the bit about the risk, so the original audit that was done was very concerned about the risks associated with that existing system, and rightly so. I'm confident that the risks that we were carrying around that existing home solution have now been mitigated as far as they possibly can. It's in an entirely supported hosting environment. It's on the latest software. The supplier entirely supports it. If that system falls over, we are as covered as we can possibly be in terms of the support that we're going to get from that supplier. The risks that we're talking about in terms of an implementation programme are all very relevant and all very real, but they're not the same risks that came in that audit report. So I think it's probably important that we agree what's the best way to manage, report on and give you assurances about those new risks, but not necessarily under the guise of the previous audit recommendations, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So one way, perhaps if I can come in, that you might want to do that is we have a Directorate Risk Register, and the implementation of a significant IT system is a high risk, in my view, and therefore it should sit on the risk register, and there should be some mitigation in there, and the audit committee can look at that and be satisfied or be assured that the appropriate mitigations are taking place, and we're working through that. That would be one way to be able to continue with that, but sign this particular recommendation off.
Okay, you persuaded me. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think I know I've seen Ben to come in, but I think basically what we'll be saying is that there'll be a new risk that needs to sit somewhere, and what I'm hearing be on your Directorate Risk Register on the implementation of it, and then, as we heard in the early presentations, if internal audit picks that up as a particularly high risk, it would come to this body. I'm right in that? Yeah, I'm getting nods. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. No, I mean, I share some of the anxiety of other committee members about these sorts of things. I mean, it's easy to think we're talking about a system, but in other committees, we're told that, for example, part of the issue with housing repairs is to do with the call centre and the contact centre, And when we talk about the issues in the contact centre, we're told that this is one of the solutions to the backlog in it. So, because it would take demand down, because people will use this to access their services. So there is a real sort of human element to this, rather than just being about the IT system. I think part of my anxiety of the implementation is that we've not been given a huge amount of detail about the implementation, other than some grand dates in the future. Could you possibly just talk us a little bit through sort of the implementation plan? And I think for me the big goal is when do people start to see the benefit externally? So when do tenants start to see and feel the changes? That might be September 23, it might be before then, as we sort of test and roll things out. And then possibly, if it's okay, could you email the committee after with a bit more information about the plan up to sort of March 24, just to give us a bit more confidence?
Yeah, I think I'm sure we can do that. We can give a separate note to the committee. We're setting out what the key milestones are as far as implementation is concerned. That's not a problem.
Some of that will be increased in the amount of fleshing out of that we can do at the point that we sign the contracts. Obviously, the supplier will be heavily involved in, supporting us to develop that implementation plan, and until we've signed on the dotted line, it sort of stays at a high level to a certain extent. But yeah, we've already got a high level implementation plan, but more detail will follow once we get right into the detail with the supplier about how we're going to work together in partnership to deliver this implementation.
Gillian.
Sorry, Chair, to intervene. I just wondered whether a committee considered whether to ask the Housing Committee to oversee this implementation, rather than having to keep an eye on it yourselves. We now have a Housing Committee that you could use to oversee this, and that's a more operational committee, and we'll be able to keep a closer eye on it than perhaps you can at this committee.
I'm sure they'll be interested.
It's a nice suggestion to pass off a bit of work to another committee, but it probably is more appropriate, and we'll capture that in some form words on the recommendation. I've just got a couple of quick questions. Hopefully very simple, reassuring answers. Is the present system robust enough to last till possibly March 24?
Yes.
There are nods, so I'll take that as a yes. I'm saying that so people hear.
Yes.
And secondly, at one of the transitional committees I was on, we were talking about the call centre, and part of the long waits was too many calls coming in. And one of the reasons was people couldn't log housing repairs online. This new system will enable them to log housing repairs online. Yes?
Yes.
Good.
What the idea behind this is, a lot of the calls we get as a housing and neighbourhood service are what I class as transactional questions. So they're around, what is my rent balance? Can I make a payment? Can I make a bid for a property? Can I report a repair? And if we can get an online offer, not everybody will use that, but an online offer, the idea is they will be able to log into the system and be able to do a number of transactions across that, and so they will be able to log on. It may be interfaces to the different systems, but the hope is that there'll be a front door, and then they'll be able to log repairs and also be able to do other housing transactions.
So, I mean, the point is that, yes, a lot of people do want the reassurance of talking to a human being, but if you can reduce the volume of calls, it saves the frustration of not just 20 minutes hanging on, but, over an hour hanging on, and that's to be welcomed. Okay, can we move to the recommendations, which is that the members of this committee recommended to note the report and close the outstanding action as it is completed, and also note the progress to replace the open housing management system and associated systems. Can we add to that we recommend that regular updates on the implementation of the new system are provided to the Housing Policy Committee, and that this committee it becomes involved as an if necessary. Does that seem a sensible recommendation? Okay, I'm getting nods from members of the committee, so we'll take that as now. Between you, I think I've seen Gillian and Jay writing, so you've captured that wording between you. Okay, thank you very much for all your work on this. I know it's been long standing, but if it does work with a nice smooth transition, and we can touch wood and hope it does, it'll be better for the staff and more importantly be much better for the customers and much better experience. Thank you. Okay, moving to item 9 on the agenda now, which is government responses to the Committee on Standards in Public Life. It's appropriate today, we've got a report from the government on standards in public life just when the Ethics Commissioner has resigned because he was put in, what was it, the expression, an odious position by the Prime Minister. But sorry, perhaps shouldn't be making political points quite like that. Okay. Gillian, I think this is your report.
Thank you, Chair. Those of you who've been on the committee for a while will remember that back in January 2019 we received a report by the Committee for Standards in Public Life with a number of recommendations, and it was about ethical standards in local government. This committee did do quite a bit of work on it, and you got together as a workshop and went through each of the recommendations and made any changes that you could do to the code of conduct for members and the procedure that we have for dealing with standards complaints. There were a number of issues that needed the government to look at and required a change in legislation. The government have now done that. They issued their report in March of this year. It's attached, their recommendations are attached to your report on starting on page 87. In summary, they haven't implemented any changes in legislation. They've said there are a couple of things that they're willing to have a look at. They'll take a bit more time to look at. And a couple of things that they've said, I think local government can probably do it anyhow, but the rest of them, nothing. Now, Chair, would you like me to go through each of them? I'll do it very quickly if you want me to, or should I just open it for questions?
Can you just highlight anything of particular significance, perhaps?
Okay, so the first recommendation was about updating to the model code of conduct, which we did do last year. The second one was about home addresses. This is an interesting one. This is one that the government are giving more consideration to. So there is a requirement for members to publish their home addresses as part of their declarations because they have a proprietary interest, a property interest in the house, and we don't have the ability, or don't have the ability to not publish that. That's been a very controversial issue since the threats to members and MPs and the death of the MP a couple of years ago. So members have, there's an ability for us to identify matters that are sensitive, but that doesn't take your address off the register. What it does is just stops it being published on the website. So members can contact me and make a plea, if you will, because it is quite a high threshold to have their address taken off the register or the published register. I think all indications on this is that the government supports this, that there shouldn't be home addresses published, but actually the legislation says that they do have to be. So we're in a bit of a dilemma with that one, but hopefully the government will pick up on that one and there may be some following legislation on it. Sorry, number 3, again, this is quite a difficult one. So 3 and 4 are talking about when members are acting in their official capacity. So this is about when the standards of conduct apply to members. they only apply when a member is acting in his or her official capacity. This is about whether it should apply when they give the impression that they're acting in their official capacity. The government think that that's not something that should happen. It should just be when you're acting in your official capacity. There's been quite a lot of discussion and views to and fro on that one, but that's where the government have landed on that one. So they've rejected that as a change. Let's have a look, what else? Councillors' spouses, so they wanted to remove the position for requiring them to disclose their interest. They've rejected that. They wanted to limit independent persons' tenure to 2 years. At the moment, it's 4 years that can be renewed, so it can be a maximum of 8 years. And I think the reasoning behind that was that actually you get some value from somebody who's experienced, so that was helpful. What else? Oh, big one, ability to suspend a councillor. So the government have come back and rejected that. And what they've said is that a councillor's answerable at the ballot box, which is the reason why the legislation was written in that way back in 2011 when the Localism Act came about. So they've rejected that. That's not going to change. Something about ability to bar members from premises. So as a sanction, can a council bar an individual member? They've said no. The criminal law is a better place for that to be dealt with. A requirement for parish councils to adopt the Principal Council's Code has been rejected. It's got to be a choice for the parish council. Our parish councils do adopt our code, but that's through their choice. Expanding the protection for statutory officers to disciplinary sanctions as well as dismissal. So at the moment they're around dismissal. The government are consulting on that, so they've taken that away to think about. Oh, and then the last one was about councillors being listed as prescribed persons under the Public Interest Disclosure Act. So that's about councillors being listed as people who you can whistleblow to. The government have said that councillors are too close to that they are the local authority, so they're not independent, and therefore it's not appropriate. So that's a quick summary through of it. Chair,
thank you, Janet. I mean, in reading this, it struck me that Sheffield City Council had implemented already what it could do, and some of the things that weren't legislated for, we were doing as best practice as well. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, Chair. Chair, if you don't mind, I don't know whether the independent persons who are on the screen might want to comment at all.
Yes, certainly. Is it David? Is it right? Yeah, I can see your hand up now, David. Yes. Okay.
Right.
Go ahead.
The problem now is I've got to put my hand up. Right, you take it down. I just feel that the committee report in 2019 was very widely acclaimed, very well regarded. Basically applauded by most groups who have an interest in this area, and to me the government's minimal active interest is very, very disappointing. Gillian has highlighted some of the issues in the covering report, sanctions, etc. And she's talked about another one that I really find disappointing. I think the question of defining when a member is acting in their official capacity and when they're not is very, very murky. And this was an ideal opportunity for the government to help improve that situation enormously. So I just feel very disappointed at what appears to be a rather ambivalent attitude to the whole issue. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I think that's more of a comment than a question. Is there anybody else want to contribute on this? I'll take Ben first, then Angela.
So I guess the question is, what's the status of this? Is it just merely the government putting thoughts down on paper, or does it have any more sort of ramification to it? And I say that particularly in relation to recommendation 3 about the use of social media, which we sort of discussed when we reviewed the code of conduct. This issue of when a councillor publishes something, is it as a councillor or is it as a private person? And in the code of conduct revision that we did last time, we kept that distinction, I think because we felt we had to. And yet there are members of this council who have made comments on social media that have been disciplined in other forums but haven't been disciplined here because we say, oh, you've done that as a private person, not a councillor, so we can't discipline you. But other forums say, that's foul, you need to be disciplined. And does the wording that the government say, where they say that it's down to councils to consider whether it's whether their code of conduct's adequate to address the issue of inappropriate use on social media, does that help us to sort of shift that balance, or is this just government writing words on paper that have no actual weight or meaning?
Maybe I wouldn't phrase it that way, but it is the latter. So this is the government's response, and it has no sway. We are still bound by the law. The law at the moment is the Localism Act, and then there's case law that sits on top of that, and that still hasn't been overturned. And so the Ken Livingstone case is still relevant in this regard, and that very clearly says that a councillor has to be acting in their capacity as a councillor. They're entitled to private life. So that does mean that somebody, a councillor, on social media who isn't, clearly isn't being a councillor at that time can do what they want because it's private law. They're acting in their private life.
Yes, very blurred lines, I think, in some cases.
Hi, thank you. And yeah, it's unfortunate that that's the response, but there's not much that we can do. I was wondering whether it would be possible on recommendation 2 that the government has not agreed to. You know that this is something quite close to my heart. Today is 6 years that Joe Cox was murdered. And as there have been episodes of people I know that have had people turning up on their doorstep in Sheffield, would it be possible to remind members that if there are the right circumstances, they can get in touch with you and have their address removed from, it would only be removed from the online register, but it would still be registered here at town hall, so people could still come in person, I suppose. But I think it's something that we have to be mindful of because I believe because of social media, there is more of a danger to people than there has been maybe, whenever the Localism Act came into force, and information is out there, and sometimes, we are exposed to dangers. I know that we have to protect ourselves, but if our address is public, potentially, especially if you live in your ward as well, and then it's not just about the danger, it's also about being bothered at all hours. I mean, we are not required to work 24 hours a day, and I have a colleague that lives in the ward that has people regularly going, and it's not fair. It's just not fair that we're entitled to a good work-life balance if possible at all, yeah.
don't know whether you want to respond. Yeah.
To respond, yes, thank you. Yeah, so I make sure that on induction, all new councillors get that message. So there is the provision within the Act for Sensitive Interests. I've had regular conversations with the whips about it, and there's been some recent training that's been available to all councillors on code of conduct. So if you have actually signed up and taken that training, then you will also get a reminder about it again there. But yes, you're absolutely right, councillor, that there is an ability to be able to ask if there's a specific issue.
Simon, then Alison.
So yeah, you did kind of answer most of my points, but I would just echo Councillor Argento's words. But also, there is the extreme of people knocking on your door, but it is a barrier to entry to politics. So that if people could, did know they didn't have to publicise their address, then, as I say, it might encourage more people to get into politics, who otherwise might not. When I first started, it was just accepted that you did. These days, I think it has to take account of the world we live in, which has changed. Thank you.
I think it's a shame, really, that we've reached that stage. But as Angela said, with Joe Cox and other events that have been over the years, all people in public life have become more cautious. And I realise that actually, well, I publish my address anyway, but it's in the phone book when I think about it anyway. And when you've been around quite a few years as a councillor, people get to know where you live anyway. Yeah.
I can fully understand why the report's been brought to this committee with our remit on standards, but I think that the report's relevant to all councillors, not just those who are here. And my question is, how is the information in this report going to be communicated to a wider audience?
Good question. And Gillian's going to provide a good answer.
I can provide an answer, Chair. You may think it's insufficient. It's something I'd discuss with the whips, but that's probably, as well as bringing it to this committee, I'd talk about it with the whips, and it'd be talked about in any training, but I wouldn't specifically be doing any wider circulation of the information.
I think that perhaps we need to take this back to our groups to make sure it's disseminated to all members of our groups then. I see no further questions, so recommends that we note the government responses to the Committee on Standards in Public Life, and that's it basically, just note the response. Thank you very much. Right, the next is item 10 on the agenda, which is the work programme, which, Jay, I think it's you, this is it?
Nothing really to add, Chair, apart from the work programme, which is on 101 in your report, is agreed up to June 2023. It's there for the committee to approve and identify any more items they wish to include on the work programme.
Has anybody got any comments? Alison?
It's just following on from Angela's earlier comment about the meeting with the external auditors, and I wondered if, when that has been arranged, it can be inserted into the work programme.
I'm happy to pick that up.
Or even insert it now with a to be confirmed date.
Thank you. Yeah, we can certainly do that. Tom?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Jay. It was a question about the next meeting in July. On there is the role of the Audit Committee in training, and as a new member, I just wondered why that wasn't this meeting and earlier in the cycle. I appreciate there were some things that probably had to come to this meeting that were already scheduled, but I think in future years, bringing that forward to the start of the municipal year might be helpful.
Fair point, I think. Yeah. And noted. Can I just on that as well note that the July meeting is the 28th of July, which is different from the original published date of the 21st of July. It says that there will be at least 5 meetings of the committee during the year, but actually there are 10 scheduled. So it's just August basically that we haven't got one scheduled, and we'll keep all those 10 on the agenda, and if any of them need to be cancelled, that'll be a bonus, but keep those in their diary. Ben.
I'm just going to say this because I've been making this point for 12 years. So the July meeting falls during the school holidays, and I think as a council we need to stop scheduling meetings that unnecessarily during school holidays. If you want to attract councillors who are parents, who are working and all these things, we need to be more human friendly, and scheduling meetings during holidays where my holiday doesn't fall on that week, but if it did I wouldn't be here, and that would be me missing a meeting because the council doesn't think of working parents in the process. So I'm just flagging that point yet again. We made good progress on that. We stopped having cabinet meetings during school holidays and all these things. Since we've introduced the committee system, we've gone back. And I think that's a big detriment to attracting good people to stand to office in the future.
I think part of this, because I've raised the point before, is actually it came as a surprise to many of us who'd already booked things that there was a council meeting late in July that we weren't expecting, and has caught a number of colleagues out. But it's to do with having to get policy committees in, and I'm sure in the review, we can perhaps sort this out, because most people are used to the first Wednesday in the month and keep their diaries free on that day. And as I say, the July meeting might be slightly more sparsely attended because of the issues you've raised. Okay, I see no other comments on that. So we now move to the final item on the agenda, which is to be taken, excluding members of the press and public. So can we please stop recording now?